This is kind of... This is unscripted, and in response to things that have happened lately. It has to do with self-delusionism.
Hello, and again, welcome to the...
I'm gonna turn the volume off because I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to talk here, and GLaDOS is bothering me. So, it has recently occurred to me that I'm not who I thought I was. And a big part of that, as I was saying, self-delusion is I chose to ignore what the people around me were saying. I chose to ignore what I was seeing within myself, and I chose to make myself more important than others. And I hurt the people around me as a result. To the point where I now have more or less lost everyone. And, well, that's not a permanent thing. These people I know are forgiving, and apologies, I'm a diabetic. And it was hard to admit that I was actually the one who was at fault, not the people around me. And it wasn't until I lost the person who I was growing closest to that I realized that it was me that was the problem and not others. Because what happens is you have a certain ideal of yourself, and you feel like you're holding yourself to that ideal, and you feel like I'm not that bad. I make the occasional mistake. But you became more and more lenient with yourself over time. Without even realizing it. Actually, that's not true. I did realize it, and I ignored it because it was easier. Because ignoring it was the easy way out. It was the way to get out of the problems instead of dealing with them and solving them and becoming a better person. Instead of becoming a better person, I failed. And very nearly cost me everything. And okay, yeah, I'm leaving the audio off. It occurs to me that, I could have done something that I should have done better. And I didn't. And that alone is my fault. And had I done better, I would have, I wouldn't be in the position that I am now. Where the people I know, people who loved me, have turned against me. And the only person I can blame is myself. I was selfish. I didn't care about anything. I chose not to care. I wallowed in self-pity and in regret, and I tortured myself day after day after day without actually ever doing anything about it. That I could have done, that I should have done, to make it right before it got out of hand. And now I am alone, and not physically alone, but emotionally alone. And it's my fault. I should have done better. And it's strange, realizing that, coming to that realization. Realizing that you're not who you thought you were. Realizing that the people who used to praise you now don't want really anything to do with you. And you didn't see it coming. Even though you should have. In this case, I'm still referring to myself. But fortunately, it's not too late. It's too late in some respects. But at the same time, it's not. It's a matter of choice. And I'm disappointed in myself that I've had to lose as much as I have in order to realize that I need to make the choice to be better, to do better. But at the same time, I am grateful that it's happened when it has, and how it has, because it could have been worse. As it stands, the relationships that I have are mendable. The people that I've hurt are people who've been with me through many trials. There are people who are willing to forgive me, people who are willing to put it past them and put it past, as long as I'm willing to change. And it's part of it hurts because you want to say, why do you have the thoughts that you have about me? Why are you thinking these things? Why are you saying these things? These things are hurtful. Without stopping to realize that they're true. And again, it's my fault. I've gotten myself into this position. I could have avoided this had I actually thought ahead instead of not thinking ahead. The other thing is being called to be different, I guess. How do I say that without sounding so? I've been thinking about my theology, I've been thinking about my spirituality, and I've been raised a Christian my entire life, and thinking about what that actually means in practice. And there are a lot of moral obligations that come with that I have not abided by. I've said things to people that I shouldn't have. I've been selfish. I've been morally reprehensible. But the thing is to understand that being a bad person is not permanent state of being. It's a result of the decisions that you've made. When you're like me, you stop to ask yourself, how did we get here? And if you're like me, then you've also had the fortune of knowing exactly how you got here. Of knowing exactly how you got here and how you got here, and the nature of the decisions that you've made that have landed you in the position that you find yourself in. And again, this is unscripted, so I don't even remember 2 sentences ago, but the point that I'm trying to make is that for me, I've decided to be better. Whatever it takes, whatever the cost is. I've decided to be better. And I am fortunate enough to have the tools at my disposal to make that possible. I am fortunate enough to have a family who loves me enough to... What am I doing? I am fortunate enough to have a family who loves me enough to not throw me by the wayside and let my life waste away. I'm also disappointed in myself because I shouldn't be faced with losing everything that matters to me in order to be better. That shouldn't be the trigger. For me, it was. For me, ironically, the trigger was losing a specific person. And I realized I need to take a look at myself. And I don't know. Life is life, and it's always going to be life, and you can't blame life for everything. Doing so is how you get into the position that I've ended up in. Doing so is how you take responsibility away from yourself for the things that should be your responsibility. And when you do that, then you don't feel obligated to work on yourself. You don't feel obligated to actually do what you need to do to better yourself. And that's how you land in the position that I've landed in. And regrets don't mean anything. If you don't do anything about them. Portal is really the wrong game to play while you're trying to think about what you're saying. Regrets don't mean anything unless you do something about them. You can sit on your couch all day long and weep about either how you've been wronged or about how you've wronged others. So for people who have made similar mistakes recently, for people who have chosen to be selfish, to be greedy, not necessarily about money, but greed in the sense of wanting everything for yourself. I placed the wrong portal. Oh wait, no, I didn't. And you can't, like, really destroy yourself. Because when you do that, then you stop looking for ways to solve the problem. You focus on the problem itself instead of on solutions to it. How do you make it right? And if the people that you've hurt, like me, are people that you genuinely care about, people who believe that you're no longer capable of caring, then sitting around isn't gonna do anything. You have to make it right. And the only way that you can make it right is by deciding to make it right. Whether it's today, whether it's tomorrow. Deciding to make it right is the first step. No, acknowledging that there is a problem is the first step. Ultimately, acknowledging the problem does nothing if you don't take the steps after that. Because while acknowledging the problem is indeed the first step, it's not the only step. It's the first step in a whole long line of steps that you have to take. And from the experience that I'm having now, I see clearly. And I'm fortunate enough to see it clearly before it's too late. Because what happens is, if you don't see it clearly, then you lose everything. So, step one is acknowledging that you have a problem, taking responsibility for it. Step two is making amends. If you're like me, then you've hurt people. You've hurt people who care about you. People who loved you, people who would do anything for you, you've hurt them. And you've caused them to believe that you don't care. That's what happened to me. So acknowledge that you have a problem, take responsibility for it, make amends, and then solve the problem. And it's not an overnight thing. When it comes to doing the things, for me, my problem was doing the things that I wanted to do instead of the things that I should do. And that ended up being taken to an extreme degree. So I've been questioning a lot of things lately. Most notably my own character, which... You can't be afraid of confronting yourself. What did I do? Oh. That's what I did. Bad. No, you get up there. Bad. Now, if you're like me, then you were once a good person. You were once someone that the people around you could point to and say you should be more like him. And that changes. You can blame the circumstances for it changing. You can pretend that it's because life has been bad to you, and when life gets better, you'll be a better person. When, you stop getting hurt, when you stop hurting, then you'll have the energy to make yourself better. But if you don't make yourself better, you'll never have the energy. You'll always be on the bottom, because you'll always be alone, and because you'll always hate yourself, because you know that there's an issue. So you gotta stop hating yourself, because that does nothing for anyone. It's an excuse to keep making the same mistakes. Hating yourself is an excuse to keep doing what you do. Because there's a part of you that thinks if you sit around and hate yourself, that it's all better. Because you don't feel good about the mistakes that you make. So it's not that big a deal. No, the answer is that it is a big deal. It is a very big deal. And it is foolish, fellow human. It is foolish to believe that it is not a big deal. Because when you start letting self-hatred drive you, as I did, then you do drain yourself to the point where you don't care anymore. And that's what happened to me, and that's why I started hurting people. Because I didn't care anymore. And it connects to other things about me as well. We all have the best version of ourselves that we want to be. Sometimes it's the person that we think we are. As was the case with me, not being willing to acknowledge your mistakes, saying I was once a good person, so I still am. And it doesn't work that way. Being a good person or a bad person isn't that cut and dry. It doesn't matter, so to speak. Oh, I won. Okay. It doesn't matter. What was I saying? I was talking about being a good person. It doesn't matter if you're a good person a year ago. It doesn't matter if you were a bad person a year ago. Because whether or not you're a good person or a bad person has nothing to do with who you are. It has to do with the choices that you make, which can be influenced by who you are, but who you are does not determine whether or not you're a good or bad person. It's the decisions that you make. And again, we use who you are as an excuse sometimes. I make those mistakes because that's just who I am. And that's bullcrap. It's removing responsibility from yourself and putting it on genes, putting it on anything other than actually taking responsibility yourself. Because taking responsibility is scary. It means acknowledging that, we're not amazing, which is scary in a world where being amazing is how you make friends, and you kind of need other human beings to like you in order to survive, at least historically. But don't use humans, if you believe in evolution, evolutionary traits. If you believe in creation, creationary traits. I'm not here to argue theology. We could, but that would kind of detract from the point of this video, which is saying that you are not hopeless. And this is a point that I'm trying to build to, and I didn't realize I was trying to build to it until just now, but I kind of knew, and that is you are not without hope. There is always hope. I recently saw Project Hail Mary in theaters, and there is always hope, fellow human, because we all do things that make us hate ourselves, and a lot of times we take that self-hatred too far. We take it into saying, I'm not good enough to be a person. I'm not good enough, period, and I'm not a good person. And that, my fellow human, is a lie that we tell ourselves, because I am an idiot, because we are idiots together. And we all do dumb things. You can be an idiot selectively. It is possible to be a selective idiot. We use these words and we define ourselves by them, but that's not the point. That's not why. I mean, I was going to say that's not why these words were invented. It could be. That's not how we should use them. Saying I was an idiot, that means that you can, if you work for it, you can not be an idiot. If you do what's right, and it is a decision. And people forget that it's a decision. People forget that it doesn't just happen. Nothing ever just happens, fellow human. That's not how life works. And I'm sorry to inform you of that. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Things don't just happen. And you might wonder, how do I make myself a better person? Well, think clearly about the mistakes that you've made and don't make them. And it's not an easy process. I will give you that. But it's effort. It takes effort to get to the point where you can look at the mirror and say, I am proud of that person. But when you do, it will be worth it. So, fellow human, whoever is watching this, stop hating yourself. You probably look at my situation and you say he was going through a hard time or whatever, and you might have some feeling of sympathy, or maybe you'll just say that I'm a terrible person and move on with it. Either way, that decision's yours to make. I'm not concerned with that. But you shouldn't feel that way about yourself. You shouldn't feel that you're a terrible person. Because while you might have been a terrible person, that doesn't define who you will always be. Because who you are depends on who you choose to be. And that is your choice. You don't have to be the person who hurts the people they love because of trauma, because of selfishness, because of self-doubt, because of self-hatred. You don't have to be that person. Just as I didn't have to be that person. I ended up as that person because that's who I chose to be. And that's not who you want to be. It's not who you want to choose to be. Everybody is capable of doing good. Everyone is capable of being better. And sometimes it's hard, and sometimes you need help. So maybe my hope is, fellow human, that I have helped you. That somehow or another, this video reaches out to the person who needs to hear it. I haven't made things right yet. I'm still in the process of doing that, but that doesn't mean that I can't. I can, and it's not going to be easy, but it's a choice that I'm willing to make. It's a length that I'm willing to go to. Not even necessarily just to salvage the relationships that it has cost me, but because we should want to be better. It should be a goal of ours, always, to be better. Being better should be something that we want to do for ourselves, not just for other people, but so that we can look in the mirror and say, that is someone worth being. But you have to stop lying to yourself. You have to stop excusing your actions as circumstantial. You have to stop excusing your actions as being a result of the life that you've lived, of just being a result of who you are. Because when you do that, you eliminate responsibility for yourself in such a way as to feel like you're still being responsible for your actions. And that's the easy way out. That's why it's easier to say I am a terrible person and get on with it than it is to actually make an effort to be different. Because saying that you're terrible and accepting that identity means that you don't have to care anymore. And that apathy is what leads you to be in the position that I am in today. And it's a position that you can get out of if you really want to. And I really want to. I just felt compelled to say that. Thank you all, anybody who watched, for watching, and for taking the time to listen to me. Because you didn't have to do that. That was entirely up to you, if you wanted to hear me ramble. But if you did hear me ramble, then I hope, with great sincerity, that I had helped someone today. And I hope that by helping someone, I can start to prove to myself and to all of you, and to the people in my own family, that I am someone worth loving, someone worth being around, someone who cares about people. The people that I love. The people who matter to me. That is all. Thank you very much for watching.